Authorities say there is a surge of migrants making their way across the U.S.-Mexico border. Nearly 2,400 people tried to enter the country through El Paso, Texas on Sunday alone.
And now this comes as Title 42, the policy put in place under former President Donald Trump and used to deport migrants during the pandemic in large numbers, is set to expire next week. So CBS correspondent Lilia Luciano is in El Paso with the developments on that. Lilia, good to see you. What is the migrant situation like in El Paso right now?
Anne-Marie, Vlad, I have landed in many Texas cities, and you tend to see on border cities, people kind of camping out or sleeping at the airport, waiting for flights. I hadn't seen anything like this, and I talked to people who work at the airport. They were telling me it's like nothing they've ever experienced. Officials here in El Paso also tell us that there are between 500 and 600 people on any given night camping out at the airport. That's just the airport. That's not to mention bus terminals where migrants go or asylum seekers to make their way onto their final destinations. The situation, as you've seen from images that have come out throughout this weekend, across the border or people coming in is really dire. And one thing, you can probably see as I'm talking to you how, you see that it's cold. I'm surprised at this cold, knowing the amount of people that are crossing. Thousands of people every day. El Paso is averaging 2,500 people every day. El Paso the city itself is getting about 1,000 migrants who are released to NGOs and to the city so that they can be, placed in either in shelters or helped navigate to, the place that they're going to go next. The people who are released after they're being processed are just the ones that have sponsors where they have a place to go. In August, it was 250, and that was still a high number. So imagine from 250 to 1,000, that's a big number. And in total, it's about 2,500 people that are crossing into this city that has just over 700,000 people. So it is dire. And authorities here are asking for federal help. They're asking for a federal shelter so that people are not sleeping on the street, in the airport, or in these bus terminals, and some assistance for the shelters that are really packed and have been for a while.
So what happens to folks, Lilia, once they get to the border? What's the process?
That's a good question because it depends. There are people, because Title 42 is still in place for now, for at least another week. It's set to expire next Wednesday, a week from today. People from certain countries are immediately expelled back to those countries. Those are countries that accept these deportations. Mexico has agreed to take in migrants from certain countries, like most recently Venezuela. So that's why you're not seeing those mass, big groups of Venezuelans crossing, because Mexico is taking Venezuelans. But when it comes to Nicaraguans, Nicaragua is not taking deportees because of the relationship between the U.S. and Nicaragua. Nicaragua is not accepting deportees, but neither is Mexico. And so right now, the vast majority of the people we encountered when we got here, the vast majority of people who are crossing into El Paso are coming from Nicaragua. Why are they fleeing? Well, I had an opportunity to talk to some of the migrants that we encountered yesterday at the airport, families, individuals. They were telling me, look, in the most simplest of forms, we're being politically persecuted. People lose their jobs for not having voted or for having questioned the integrity of their election. And then that becomes a snowball effect where people in their community start turning against them, where they feel targeted, where they feel threatened. And another thing that happened that they told me, and the reason why there's so many, I said, why now? It's very cold. This is an unusual time for so many people to come across the border. They were saying that there's messaging out there that tells them that because Nicaraguans have this kind of special situation right now compared to other countries, once Title 42 is lifted next week, the word on the street for them is we have to get there before this. Because for them, essentially, the border is closed. It's not that the border is closed for them, that they can't seek asylum, is that now they have to stand in line with every other country that the U.S. has to accept as asylum seekers. I also heard misinformation. I heard from a woman, this mother that came from Ecuador. She's been traveling for a month with 2 daughters. Her daughters were sick. They needed medicine. Luisa, our producer, was trying to scramble to find medicine for them because they said they didn't get medicine in the shelter. They didn't get medicine while they were being processed, and she was afraid of telling authorities that they were sick. This woman says, from the moment I started that journey, I regretted it. Why she took the journey? She had seen videos on TikTok showing that it was easy, that the American dream was very accessible. So there's also misinformation and a miscalculation for some families that get here, and because she's from Ecuador, she could very likely be exported right back with her 2 daughters, and she's pregnant, due in April.
Wow.
It's a true humanitarian crisis. What authorities, what locals, what NGOs are dealing with here, and we can only expect it to be even more difficult in a week when Title 42 is lifted.
Yeah, indeed. So we know that the Biden administration is seeking additional funding for the border. It sounds like it's going to take a lot of money to solve things here. But what can you tell us about, the money that the Biden administration is seeking, how they want to use it, and whether or not there is any Republican support in Congress?
Well, as you know, when it comes to the border, things are very divided. Here in the city of El Paso, the mayor and the city are seeking emergency funding, and they're seeking reimbursements for millions of dollars that they've already used to deal with this crisis. They also are asking for a federal shelter to be open so people are not sleeping out on the street, so people are not having to spend the night in these bus terminals or at the airport, so the situation becomes more manageable ahead of Title 42 expiring. The Biden administration is asking for $3 billion, but as you said, it's Republicans are not on board, and they're asking for what they call more border security or closing of the border, or this kind of terminology where there can be an agreement of some policies that they would be more on board with from Democrats, and hopefully negotiate and allot those funds for not just El Paso. This is one city that is at a breaking point, but across the border, and for all of the cities that are now taking part in receiving migrants and sheltering them. And the biggest backlog that exists in this country is the fact that the courts have a backlog, that there's not enough judges, that there's not enough courts to see these cases, and that people in the meantime can't work. So the solution has to be comprehensive. It has to be intricate. It has to be something that makes sense for migrants, for the economy, and for the politicians ultimately making that decision.
Incredible reporting as always, Lilia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vlad.